promotions, among other issues. At the same time, the Kenya Environmental Health and Public Health Practitioners Union has warned Kenyans that they could be consuming food contaminated with fecal matter and mercury, which pose serious health risks. Harriet Chimea reports.
Solidarity forever.
The Kenya National Union of Nurses and Midwives have issued a stern warning of an imminent industrial action set to begin on January 13th if the government fails to address their critical concerns before and during their dialogue set for January 6th.
We are ready for dialogue, but the dialogue must only lead to one thing: conversion of nurses on contract to permanent and pensionary. But as we address, the nurses at the counties will be on strike from 13th. We will not be waiting for those dialogue, because those dialogue can happen, but that anybody in government doesn't know that these nurses exist.
The nurses and midwives issued several demands. Chief among them is conversion of nurses from contract to permanent and pensionable terms, implementation of their 2017 CBA, employment of more nurses, promotions, recognition of nurses as a directorate in the Health Act 2017, and implementation of a career progression. And on issues of allowances and delayed salaries.
Isitoshe, tumeweza kuona pia kwa serikali za kati kuwa zinafanya hivi, zinachelewesha mishahara ya wauguzi, wafanyikazi. Kuna ile tunasema zile pesa wanatukata za kuweza kwenda hospitalini, na pia mambo mengine kama loans tumezichukua.
They have further decried the exploitation of specialized nurses and failure to employ nurses under the universal health care coverage.
There is no way we have nurses working, like, for example, in theater, in maternity, doing the same services, but when it comes to payment, there is a difference of even 50,000.
Nairobi, hoy! Hoy!
Meanwhile, the Kenya Environmental Health and Public Health Practitioners Union have warned that Kenyans could be consuming fecal matter and mercury that pose grave health risks.
It will interest you, Mr. President, or rather surprise you, that Kenyans have been consuming fecal matter. Heavy metals like mercury in tea. I'm sure we take tea every day. Exposed to dangerous hazardous waste like electronic and radiological waste that claim several cancer cases.
This comes even as they vowed that they would be downing their tools come January over failure to prioritize resource allocation towards preventative measures and failure to employ public health officers and interns.
Kama tutasikizwa na ministry ama wizara husika ya masuala ya afya, itabidi ikianza Januari, ikianza mwaka inakuja 2025, it's not going to be a good year for us as public health officers. Tuta mobilize, tutaitisha watu wetu wote. All our members will now down tools, atutafanya kazi. You must know that there are PHOs who have been serving under Universal Health Care Program. And their contracts were extended to close to, this is the 5th year they are serving that contract. And the law prohibits somebody serving to that extent. If you look at even their salary, they receive Armiaga salary. Some of them are paid 30,000.
Calling for dialogue, the practitioners are demanding proper representation in the Social Health Authority Board, purchase benefits and SHA, restructuring of the Public Health Council, regulation of community health promoters, and recruitment and confirmation of public health officers.
Solidarity forever.
Harriet Chimea, K24.
Away from that, Controller of Budget Margaret Nyakango is once again sounding an alarm over the ballooning public debt that contravenes the set laws. The public debt stock, Nyakango notes, increased by 2% from 10.58 trillion as of 30th June 2024 to 10.79 trillion as of the 30th of September 2024. Even despite the government's pledge to instill austerity, it is still spending more on salaries and allowances and miscellaneous services, leading to recurring expenditures. Martin Opio looks at the latest release from Nyakango, detailing that ministries splashed millions in hospitality and local foreign travels as development suffered.
Yet another damning report from the Control of Budget Margaret Nyakango. The government is in the spotlight over the ballooning public debt that continues to surpass the 55% GDP debt ceiling constitutionally allowed. Nyakango says that as of 30th September 2024, the public debt stock stood at 10.79 trillion Kenya shillings, which is 67% of the GDP, comprising of 5.1 trillion Kenya shillings due to external lenders, 48%, and 5.60 trillion shillings to domestic lenders, which is 52%. The COB argues that public debt stock increased by 2% from 10.58 trillion shillings as of 30th June 2024 to 10.79 trillion shillings as of 30th September. External debt increased by 0.3%, while domestic debt recorded a 4% growth attributable to more borrowing in the domestic market, therefore surpassing the authorized public debt limit. It is Nyakango's opinion that the government ought to reduce budget deficit financing through fiscal consolidation to contain the increase in public debt. Quite a thorny issue that necessitated the Gen Zs to head to the streets, that the government promised to undertake various strategies to reduce the debt, including austerity measures that were to be implemented by various ministries and government officials. Even though the government had to rationalize its 2024-2025 budget following the rejection of the Finance Bill 2024 in June, the expenditures within the government have continued to rise. Nyakango notes that revisions under Supplementary Budget 1 affected recurrent and development expenditures estimates and were meant to accommodate the likely revenue shortfall based on the withdrawn bill. The budget rationalization will likely affect the implementation of the planned activities, especially for the development activities for financial year 2024-2025. The top 3 offices in the country gobbled millions in domestic and international travels. The office of the President, his then Deputy Rigathi Gachagua, and that of Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi alone, gobbling up at least 129 million shillings in hospitality and travels, both domestically and internationally. This covered the period from June to September. For travels, the 3 offices used at least 75 million shillings in the first 3 months of the financial year, with 54 million shillings going to hospitality alone. She recommends that the government institute strategies to improve revenue generation for both levels of government to boost revenue. This will ensure that planned activities are funded. A review of the salaries and allowances, miscellaneous services sum, budgetary allocations for the financial year 2023-2024 and financial year 2024-2025 reveals notable variations in budgeted salaries and allowances. This is despite the Salaries and Remuneration Commission gazetting the remuneration of constitutional office holders as public information. The spending patterns of certain offices further highlight the disparity. In the first 3 months of the financial year 2024-2025, 3 offices had utilized over 40% of their annual budgets. The Commission on Administrative of Justice utilized 54%, the Office of the Attorney General had utilized 48%, and the National Gender and Equality Commission had utilized 44% within the first 3 months of the financial year 2024-2025. This figure suggests a mismatch between the allocated budgets and actual spending needs, raising concerns about financial planning and sustainability. The National Treasury has to this end been urged to address these discrepancies by ensuring a more realistic and efficient allocations for the same. This, she says, can be achieved through strategic reallocations in supplementary budget 2 and to better align resources with actual expenditures trends. As per Nyakango, such measures are essential to optimize public funds, support the functioning of critical institutions, and maintain transparency and accountability in the management of salaries and allowances. Reports submitted by ministries, departments, and agencies indicated a low level of project implementation. Ministerial development expenditure was 106.39 billion shillings, representing an absorption rate of 17% compared to the expected absorption rate of 25% in the first 3 months of the financial year. Consequently, most MDS did not meet their quarterly targets. The low level of absorption of the development budget has been attributed to delays in disbursement of funds and delays occasioned by budget rationalization under the Supplementary 1 budget. Martin Opio, K24 TV, Nairobi.
Elsewhere, President William Ruto's recent political moves paint the picture of a man who has seemingly abandoned the promises that propelled him to power. The promises made to the hustlers. The head of state, who rose to prominence through his hustler versus dynasty narrative, had pledged to create a hustler-led government. Yet, 2 years down the line, the hustlers are still hustling as Ruto appears to have joined the Dynasty Club.
Safari hii, hawa watu wametuzoea siku nyingi. Mimi nataka niwaulize watu wa Sianda, watu wa Mumias. Safari hii nimewapatia hawa watu notice ya kwamba 2022 hawa watu wa mama mboga na ule wa bodaboda na hawa wa mkokoteni na wheelbarrow na huyo wa kioski na makanga, tutaunda serikali ya mahasla 2022. Wajipange.
These were Ruto's words as he rallied Kenyans, vowing to prioritize the needs of the common mwananchi. But many now see this as a mere ploy to gain power, preying on the innocence and desperation of those who believed in him.
Yes. Wangapi wako na imani tutaunda serikali 2022 ya mahasla? Yes.
During the charged 2022 campaigns, the country was split along class lines, hustlers versus dynasties. Ruto, as the face of the hustler movement, promised to ensure that those at the bottom of the pyramid will enjoy equal opportunities and a share of government resources. Kenyans, hopeful for change, marched behind him, believing he had their best interests at heart. Power was taken, and for the hustlers, it felt like the dawn of a new day. They envisioned a seat at the table, opportunities for jobs, appointments, and relief from the high cost of living. But their hopes quickly began to fade. The first wave of government appointments was dominated by political elites allied to President William Ruto. No representation for the hustlers. The cracks widened in 2023 with the finance bill proposal to increase taxes sparked nationwide protests. Hustlers cried out, but their pleas fell on deaf ears as the controversial taxes were passed. By 2024, the situation worsened with additional tax hikes. The youth, frustrated by rising costs and unfulfilled promises, took to the streets. Their anger was palpable. Many hoped the protests would serve as a wake-up call for the president to return to his campaign promises. Instead, Ruto dissolved his cabinet, raising hopes that the youth and hustlers might finally find a place in his government. However, the reshuffle only brought further disappointment. To the surprise of many, Ruto turned to opposition leader Raila Odinga, a figure he had once branded as part of the dynasty. This newfound collaboration shocked the hustlers who had trusted Ruto's vision. The next cabinet appointments featured faces closely allied to Raila, while hustlers remained conspicuously absent. Ruto justified this move as a step towards uniting a politically divided nation, but the reality told a different story. Another dalliance with a dynasty is when President William Ruto recently met with former President Uhuru Kenyatta, another individual he had labeled as part of the dynasty during his campaign, leading to the third cabinet reshuffle and assignments. The reshuffle revealed appointments of individuals allied with Kenyatta, names well known with Kenya's political elite since independence. This begs the question, what happened to the hustlers who were promised a seat at the table? Who now represents those at the bottom of the pyramid? The handshake between Ruto and Raila and the rekindled relationship between Ruto and Uhuru signaled that the president is dining with dynasties. But the critical question remains, has Ruto joined the dynasty club or has he invited dynasties to the hustler table? Brian Amoai, K24, Nairobi.
Well, we'll take another break right here on Evening Edition. We'll be back with more in a short while.
Mozart Casino Jackpot. Zungusha gurudumu la furaha. Kuwa mshindi. Mozart Bet.
People Daily, Kenya's trusted newspaper, is making history as the first daily to go fully digital.